Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding. And first a little bit of housekeeping here. I know some of you guys are going to my website and you're trying to buy workout programs or take a look at it, and it says not secure or whatever. The website's fine if you can just adjust your search engine or whatever and just click it to be safe, then it's okay. But I am working with the technical aspect of this right now. I just talk to customer service when it comes down on my website and do the technical issue sort of thing. So it should be fixed in about 24 hours, but if it's not, try a workaround or whatever, or just contact me directly at my email address, and you can click on my YouTube channel, find out my contact information there. And yeah, or you can Instagram me or whatever, and then I can send it out to you manually if we have to, if you want to buy a workout program or something like that. So anyway, don't worry, it's going to get fixed, but right now it's just kind of going through a little bit of a show. So I was just talking to somebody in the comments, and they were talking about failure. Now, they were saying that with squats and deadlifts, like, does anybody ever really go to failure anyway? And the truth is, some people do, much to their detriment. I mean, as far as they go to collapse failure. So I want to be specific about what I mean by failure. Failure means repping out until you cannot do another full positive rep. Now you can go deeper into failure where you can't do a full positive rep or do some forced reps, all that kind of stuff, but that's not really failure, that's going beyond failure. But for the most part, that's what it means. Now, it has to do with a positive rep while maintaining proper form. Now, when you're using some movements, they have a little bit more latitude on what proper form is as opposed to others. Meaning that, say you round your back during squats or deadlifts, you can only get away with that a few times before something snaps. Whereas when you're doing an arm curl or some, say some skull crushers, and you're using a little bit of momentum to get the weight up, you're not necessarily going to experience the same type of devastation as you would if you're cheating during deadlifts or cheating or getting a little bit out of control when it comes down to squatting. But that said, you don't always have to go to failure to get results. Some people, they make that mistake that, oh yeah, you have to always go to absolute failure, otherwise you don't get results. Now, what they meant in this context was with the squat, the quadriceps and hamstrings don't always hit failure. That is true. A lot of times people's lower back will fatigue first, or muscles in their hips or whatever, but it's not necessarily the leg muscles, which is why I have catered my range of motion based on where I feel that my legs are hitting failure and not necessarily the stabilizer muscles in the lower back. The lower back's already getting devastated. It doesn't necessarily need to be worked harder in order to get results for the overall body, especially seeing as I'm looking to enhance the leg muscles, not necessarily the lower back muscles. The lower back muscles are already fine. They're already getting beaten to death all the time with the bent over rows, the Romanian deadlifts, and also with the squats. So the trick is how can I transfer some of that stress to the legs instead of it being so concentrated on the lower back. Now, each person's going to have to play around with the lift accordingly. They're going to have to work with their own body type. But the truth of the matter is that when you're hitting close to failure on squats, it's not quite the same as, say you're doing bench presses and you just can't get another rep and then you collapse. You know, like you're able to go deeper into failure on those safer lifts than you are with squats or deadlifts. But that by no means means that you're going to not get results from squats or deadlifts, right? There's going to be an overall body stimulation, which is also necessary in order to get results. So sometimes people complicate things too much. They're saying, well, if I can't go to failure on squats, then there's no point. Let's just throw them out the door. If I can't go to failure or I can't make sure that my legs hit failure. But remember, there's also something called systemic stimulation that you want to access. And if you're not stimulating the overall system as a natural bodybuilder, you may have trouble putting on muscle. Again, there's no steadfast rules on this, but what I found is that when I'm able to access the overall system, like put a lot of weight on my back, whether it's squats, whether it's bent over rows, or deadlifts, you know, Romanian deadlifts, I find that my overall system feels different over the next few days. So then when I'm doing the smaller body parts like biceps or shoulders or whatever, I'm noticing I'm getting a lot more of a pump, a lot more results, and my physique is changing shape. There's a different endocrine experience that's happening, like the hormonal systems get stimulated. So there's no doubt that there's different types of stress that will help you put on muscle mass, and it's not always just positive muscular failure stress. Sometimes it's systemic failure, such as the nervous system has to fire so much everywhere, then it also sends out the signals to say, hey, we got to get a lot stronger, we got to put muscle on. So once you understand this, it's like I said, it's like an orchestra. There's different instruments in the orchestra. There's positive muscular failure, there's fast twitch fibers, slow twitch fibers. So that's high reps is slow twitch fibers, and low reps, which is fast twitch fibers. And then there's the overall systemic experience, which is just a lot of weight on the system. Like some guys do super heavy farmer carries, or you know, they're doing movements that are really small partials, but they're lifting a lot of weight and putting that stress on the overall system, and they can get a real decent result from that if they do it from time to time and they don't overdo it. I know lots of guys that overdo rack deads and then they tweak their lower back or do something like that. So it's about finding that sweet spot, of course, and doing it in moderation, but there's no doubt that there is a benefit to it, even if you're not going to absolute failure. Now, the other thing I'd say is that when you're using heavier weights as opposed to lower weights, it's not as necessary to go to absolute failure. I find that when you're working with endurance work or hypertrophy work, going to failure has a different benefit as far as it creates that stimulation, because you're really working on endurance. But when you're lifting a boatload of weight for lower amounts of reps, what you're doing is giving it a different type of stimulus. You're giving the body a different type of stimulus. You're saying, hey, this is what this weight feels like, and we're going to tear down tissue. But going to failure isn't as much of a factor, because we're not talking about burning up the energy stores. We're not talking about accessing those endurance fibers. We're talking about just the ropes pulling a massive amount of weight, and there's a certain amount of tearing up of the muscle from that. So that's why also powerlifters don't necessarily go to failure that often, because they're trying to access the ability to lift that heavy weight for multiple sets to refine that groove. But at the same time, they're not wanting to burn up all their energy stores, because what's the point of that? They don't want the energy to be the weak link in whether they're able to lift again. So once, and listen to this for a second, because it seems confusing, but when you're working with fast twitch fibers, absolute failure isn't as much of a factor in muscular growth as when you're working with slow twitch fibers. This is a genius moment, okay? This is something I'm actually just channeling right now as I'm speaking to you, because it's something that I inherently know, but I don't know how I know it. And you're gonna find that that's why you can use heavier weights but not necessarily hit absolute failure and still get great results, because there's a certain amount of muscle breakdown that happens just from pulling or pushing a massive amount of weight. So bear that in mind when you're working with a compound lift like a squat or a deadlift, but you're doing semi-heavier weights, you're going to notice that it's not as necessary to go to absolute failure and get that endurance burn in order to get some sort of muscular growth, at least from the fast twitch fibers anyway. So how do you get around this if you want to hit absolute failure? Well, what this person said in the comments is true. They said find a different exercise to hit those endurance type reps. So say you want to hit the quads and stuff, well then you do high rep hack squat or leg press. I hate hack squat myself, but you would use a machine and do that sort of thing. Or you do walking lunges. Like, my God, walking lunges are unbelievably brutal for destroying the entire leg. One-legged squats on the Smith machine, or even just one-legged squats, like some people call them Bulgarian split squats or whatever. These types of things are great for really killing that leg if you want to go deeper into endurance and deeper into failure without so much risk of injury. So anyway, I hope this helps out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the patrons and supporters, and take care for now. Mountain. Anyway, yeah, if you haven't checked out my Rumble channel yet, I do a lot of workout vlogs on Rumble, and I'm putting up at least a couple a week on there, so make sure you check it out. And if you don't check it out, I'm sending the Sasquatches to your house. I've said it before and I'll say it again. And I know that some of you guys, like my subscribers, are going down, the numbers. That's because they're going missing. They're going missing, you know what I'm saying? because they did not subscribe to the Rumble channel. And I send out my little centurions, the fur balls, and they come to your house, and then they give you a good talking to. And if you don't listen, well, sorry, you go missing. Mountain. Natural land.